Alright guys, today what I'm going to show you how to do is take a copper pipe, cut a piece off of it, and then we're going to cut a little piece out of it, and then so that it fits our finger, and then solder it back together so that it becomes a ring. So the first thing I'm going to start with is the ring sizer, and I'm going to find which finger I want my ring to go on, and then find the corresponding size. So please remember, never jam a ring onto your finger. If it gives you resistance, it is harder to get off than it is to put on. So just keep that in mind. So as you find on here, let me flip this over, we'll see the size of this is 12, and it's got a little dash beside it. So that means that's 12 and a half for this one. This one sizer goes up to 13. So once you find the size that is right for your finger and which finger you want it to go on, you're going to grab one of these bars and you're going to wrap tape around it until the size that you desire snugly fits on there. And you can see it's real snug. This is acting as a stand-in for our finger as we make this ring. So you want it to be nice and snug and barely fit on there. Alright, so again, that's just masking tape wrapped around this bar, and if you go a little too far, you can just take a little bit back, a little at a time, or if you're getting close, just add a little bit at a time, a couple inches at a time, until you get the size that you desire. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is cut this pipe. First thing we've got to decide is how wide do we want it to be. So I would say as a minimum, you want your ring to be 1/4 of an inch. So 1/4 of an inch is right there. 1/2 an inch is fine as well, and then maybe kind of a maximum would be about 5/8 of an inch. So somewhere in between there and there. For reference, this ring right here is 1/4 inch. So when you've decided kind of how wide you want your ring to be, you're going to mark that on your piece of pipe. So I'll put up a slide to show you what size pipe you should be using, but I've got a big hand, so I've got to use the biggest size pipe here. So size wise, I'm going to put this on my index finger, and I want it to be 3/8 of an inch. So these are eighths, so that's 1, 2, 3/8, 1/2 an inch, and 5/8 again as your maximum. So I'm going about halfway. Next thing we need to do is use the pipe cutter to cut that. So this is the pipe cutter. So I'm going to put my pipe right in there and line it up with the mark and just start to turn the knob at the top. They're all a little bit different shape, but they work on the same premise. As they've got a knob on the top, you line up the cutter wheel there and you make sure that it is sitting evenly on the rollers here. So I'm going to give that just one more turn, and my job here as I turn the pipe, I'll go all the way around one time, tighten it just a little bit more, around again, tighten it just a little bit more, and I will repeat that process until this cuts all the way through. And just take your time, be patient, make sure that it's spinning and kind of cutting in that same groove all the way around every time. And eventually it will pop itself off. Please refrain from the temptation to slide this on your finger. As you can see, it's got some really sharp stuff along the edges there, and it will light you up. So Don't put it on your finger. We're going to do a couple things before we can do that. So I've got this sandpaper on a block. I'm going to start with 80 grit, and I'm going to sand this one down. So not a fun noise, but what I'm doing is making sure that's nice and flat there. So I'll be able to tell when it's nice and flat, and it's got a kind of an even flat shine all the way around. So there we go. I got that side. Now I'm going to do the other side. And that will help get rid of that burr, which is essentially just that sharp metal hanging out there. So we can see that piece almost wanting to come off. I'll sand just a little bit more. And not quite there yet. Again, that's what I'm trying to get rid of right there. Still hanging on. Okay. It's going to come out now. It's loose. All right, so again, these little things are sharp. Be careful with those. I'm going to sand just a little bit more. Until that burr is all the way gone. The other thing I can do to help get rid of that burr is this little needle file. So this one is, I'm trying to get a view of it from here, flat on this side and rounded on this side. So I'd want to use the rounded side to come over here and file that burr off. Spinning the ring, using that file to go all the way around, get rid of that burr. Okay, it should be pretty safe to put on your finger after you do that, but as you can see, it doesn't fit yet. So a couple things we're going to do. We're going to finish sanding the outside of it. So I'm going to start sanding the outside, and this is one of those times where being able to kind of put your finger in there is handy now, because I can use the inside to kind of spin it as I go. So I'm just going to hit it with the 80 grit a little bit to get rid of the real rough stuff. And then I'm going to flip this sandpaper over to the 120 grit. Repeat that process of sanding the side of it, the side of it, and getting the outside. So as you can see, I've got it in my finger now that I don't have that burr on there, and I am sanding the outside. Okay, so now we've got it cut to the width we want. We've got it deburred and sanded a little bit. Now what we need to do is, and 99% chance you're going to have to cut it so that it fits your finger. So essentially what we have to do is take a little bit of the circumference out of it. So we're going to cut a piece out of it. So I'll show you how to do that next. Okay, so this is our jeweler's saw. This saw blade is super fine and meant for cutting really small detailed sort of things, which is what we need for this class, obviously. So the blade runs in here. These are the two screws that kind of pinch the blade into place, and then this knob is for adding tension to it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to put a blade in here. In case you break one or need one. So I'm just going to loosen this screw and this screw. So I've got my blade here, and essentially it is so small. It's really hard to see what's going on here. I don't even know if I can zoom in on it and kind of get it where I can see. Again, I really can't see it. I have to go by feel so that I can get that blade in there matching. So what I'm looking for is the side with the teeth on it. And I mean, this will cut you, but you really have to be pushing hard for it to cut you. So I found the side with the teeth on it, and what I want it to feel like is it's grabbing as I pull it down. If I run my finger this way, I should still feel the texture of the teeth, but it's, you know, it's not feeling like it's grabbing. So this way it feels like it's catching on me as I pull it down. So that's how I know where it goes. I always like to put it in the back of the saw first. I don't need to take these all the way out. I'm just going to open up that little gap in there and tighten that up. Now, I like to double check and make sure I've got the cutting side out, and I do not. So I'm going to flip that over, and again, I'm doing this by feel mainly. Put that in there just a little bit. Again, what I'm looking for is to feel like when I pull it this way that it's catching, and when I go this way I can still feel the texture of the teeth, but it's not grabbing. So I got it in there the right way. Yay. So I'm going to tighten that little knob up. Now I'm going to repeat that same thing on this side. I'm going to open this up, open up that little gap, put the saw blade in there, and slide the saw frame forward so that it fits in there. Tighten that up. So now it's really loose, so I need to tighten it up so that it will cut. So that's where this comes into play. I'm going to push back just a little bit right here, and I'm going to tighten this knob on the top. And you can see as I did that, that line straightened up, and it is nice and sharp and ready to cut. Okay, so the next thing I need to cut is, this is called a bench pin, and I'm going to attach that to the table with a C-clamp. So C-clamp's pretty self-explanatory. It's the shape of a C. To open it, turn it, to close it, turn it. I really want the top to be as low as possible. So if I put it on here like this, I'm not going to bang my knee on it, but also this stuff is going to get in the way. So this will be hanging out underneath the table, and you just have to watch out so you're not going to hit your knee on it. So be careful with that. So I'm spinning that to tighten it up, and again, as far back as I can, and this is going to be my little platform for sawing. So I've got my ring blank ready to go, and I'm going to show you how to cut that. So the first thing I've got to do with my saw blade is add some of this cutting lube to make sure that it glides along. So I'm just going to take that and run my saw down at one time. That's all I need to do. And my goal is to just cut straight down through the pipe right here. So I'm going to pull back a little bit so I don't hit the camera with the saw. So let's talk about things that may be in the way. So obviously the C-clamp is far enough away. If I cut like this, I have the possibility of cutting my finger. So as much as you can, hold it out to the side, and we're going to cut straight down right there. And we have to be careful. I'm at an angle so that I'm just cutting through this side. If I have it flat, I'm going to cut through the back side of the pipe too, which I don't want to do. Something I can do to help the blade get started and not skip around as much is take a little needle file, cut a little groove right there where the saw blade is going to sit. So I've got the saw blade sitting there, and again, I'm going at an angle, so two things I'm watching. Number one, I don't want to cut my finger. This blade will cut you. It's not going to cut your finger off, because you'll probably see pretty quickly that you're cutting yourself. So I'm going to work my way down, again, keeping the saw at an angle so that I'm just cutting through this part. If it feels like it gets stuck, just kind of lift up a little bit and gently go back and forth, and it will kind of help you unstick it. But I'm trying to use the whole blade, and watching out for my finger. No, that cut on my finger is not from the saw. And once I get here, it's going to pop loose, and we're going to see that it pops open. So my next job is to resize this to the size of my desired finger. So you can see it pops open a little bit when I close it. So again, this is my stand-in for my ring and my finger. So I'm going to try to get this to close itself in. So my preferred method there is a hammer. So I'll try to do this without hitting the camera, but I'm just gonna hold it flat and try to work it around so that it's not gonna fit perfectly right now, but this will help just kind of get it closer to where I need it to be. So I've got it closed in a bit. Again, my goal now is for this to fit my finger. So if I hold this here and overlap, make sure that it's fitting nice and tight around there, I can mark this with a marker to show where I want to cut. So I'm marking on both pieces where I'm going to cut through there so that I know those are going to get lined up. All right, so once these are like that, I've got them marked. Now I can do some work to try to get it to fit a little bit better. So I'm just going to fold them past each other until they line back up like that. So at this point, the best thing to do is to cut through both of them. That'll ensure that my two pieces fit together nice and neatly. So I'm going to pinch those together and make sure they're sitting nice and flat where they both belong, and I'm going to cut through both of them. Again, using the needle file to get it started just a little bit is a good thing. So just take your time, go nice and slow. Try to go straight down. And try to use the whole blade instead of just using like just a little bit of it. Use just a little bit of it, you'll wear that center section out and it will break really quickly. Again, feels like it kind of got caught up a little bit, so if you just take a couple little strokes back and forth, if it feels like it's caught, that will help you get that out of there. So move it around just a little bit. Yay. Okay, so now I've got that chunk moved out of there, and you can still see that it's not quite fitting quite right. So this piece is a little far up and a little far over, so I'm going to take it and try to fold it underneath just a little bit, and you can see that gap is getting closer. I'm going to repeat that same thing with this side. My real goal here is to get these two things matching up nice and neat. That's not too bad, but I feel like I'd get that just a little bit better. Okay, a little bit more. Okay, so that's a pretty good match. Next thing I'm going to do is solder this together. So I'll save that for my next video.